Welcome to your go-to Detroit Pistons podcast, The Pistons Pulse, co-hosted by me, Bryce Simon of Motor City Hoops.
And Omari Sanko for the second, Pistons beat writer for the Detroit Free Press.
And of course, we're always blessed to be joined by our producer, Wes Davenport. If you're not listening to Wes and Blake Silverman over on the Pin Down, you absolutely should be. That is on the Detroit Bad Boys YouTube channel. Make sure you are reading all of O2's work over on the Detroit Free Press website. Of course, subscribe to the Motor City Hoops Substack with all of my work. That is completely free. Before we talk Detroit Pistons today, O2, we had a trade, but it was the Detroit Lions. I saw that you had a very favorable reaction to this trade. I didn't get into it too much, but it looked like David Montgomery for two not two first round picks. That would be a heck of a haul. 2 draft picks. And was it an offensive or defensive lineman? You seemed pleased with the results.
Yeah, they got an O lineman, Scruggs, and then they got a 4th rounder and a 7th rounder. It didn't seem like Mozzie was going to be back next season anyway. And like the Sonic and Knuckles era was great. So that's the unfortunate part of it. But it sounded like he was a bit unhappy because by the end of the season, I mean, it wasn't really Sonic and Knuckles, to be honest. I mean, that's Gibbs' position. And you could probably back him up with any, at least B- running back and be fine. I know some people thought, well, if Gibbs gets hurt, like that's a big step back. And it's like, yeah, but even going from Gibbs to Mozzie is a step back, right? Like you're going from a top 3 back to, like he's a good back, but he's not on that same level. So, yeah, they got a pretty decent return. We'll see what they do in the 4th round. I mean, you could even get his replacement in the 4th round if you wanted to be honest. And yeah, we'll see. Like O-line depth, I don't know if he's going to be a starter for them, but like they just need O-linemen in general. So yeah, overall, solid trade. Not going to rock the boat or anything, but I think that's like a best case scenario.
I will say, I don't know the dates for sure, but we are getting into like legit sports season. For me, we are hitting March Madness O2. We are getting close to NBA playoffs. And then the NFL offseason is about as good as it gets. And for me, and especially Kansas City this year, I know nobody wants to hear this, but they have a top 10 draft pick and they're having to make all of these moves and kind of reset the roster. So these next 6 to 8 weeks are very exciting for me, just overall as a sports fan. Our guys Order of the Blazing Horse says, let's go. What up, though? By Demo. All right, let's talk Pistons basketball, O2. Well, no, first, artwork. I always love the artwork in the hotels you are at. So can you give us a breakdown of the artwork behind you?
That's a good question. What do we have here? It's like a red splash and a black background. That's all I got. It's, I don't know. Like, it's kind of liquidy, but it's also not. I don't know. I wish I could be like a better art critic here to give like a better breakdown. But
you sound like me in my Renaissance and Revolution art class or something like that at American University, where I thought I was just going to pass because I was on the basketball team, and then come to find out they didn't care that I was on the basketball team. And it was legitimately the hardest class I took, O2. It truly was. We do have a quick announcement here. I know some of our listeners don't love puppy talk, but we have baby talk, and Wes and Jill are excited to announce that they have had their first child. Little Winona came into the world a couple days ago, and we are very excited for Wes and Jill to enter parenthood, for Winona to be the newest member of the Pistons Pulse team. Mom and baby are doing great. Wes is actually not here with us, just for the record. They are still taking care of the baby. I bet he's back with us next week, but wanted to shout them out. Yes, congrats, Wes and Jill. So Michael says, show yourself if you dislike puppies. But shout out to Winona. I was trying to get the particulars here. He sent us the other day, but wanted to give them a shout out, O2.
Yeah, shout out to Wes and Jill. Happy to see Wes on paternity leave, as he joins Bryce on the Father Brigade. I don't know if brigade is the right word, but this feels like a new chapter in the pod. I feel like this is going to help you, whenever we play Sheet or Sham. Not that you and like Wes is crossed over to your side, like he's not on my side anymore.
Yeah, we'll have a little bit more chemistry there than before.
Like you can talk to him about baby stuff that I have no context about at all. Like you can like just give him the whole playbook. I have nothing to add there. So I feel like I'm also conceding Wes to you. I'm on my own from now on whenever we play these games. But no, just super happy for him. just super awesome, and glad everything went well as well. Because like I feel like once you get to like that last stretch, even like second hand, I kind of felt that tension. Like when is this going to happen?
I know. I agree. So, yeah, that was Saturday night, came into the world around 6 p.m. and she was 9 pounds, 3 ounces. So again, shout out to Wes, shout out to Jill, shout out to little Winona, the newest member of the Pistons Pulse family. Okay. Let's talk about the on-court action from the Detroit Pistons. Since we last recorded, the Detroit Pistons beat a not fully intact Oklahoma City team by 8. They beat a not fully intact Cleveland Cavaliers team by 3 in overtime, correct? And that Cleveland team was a little bit more, but didn't have Harden or Mitchell. And then on Sunday, they beat the Magic by 14. All of those games were a little bit tighter than what maybe I thought they were going to be at certain points. That Cavs game was really crazy. Cade fouls out and they still find a way to win in overtime. Oklahoma City they just compete a night in and night out. Orlando game was pretty close, and then Detroit eventually took over. I do want to start with the Orlando game real quick, O2. This team just doesn't need to make threes. Is that our takeaway from the Magic game? Is I need to shut up about it because it just doesn't matter? Is that what we need to say?
Yeah, I mean, that was their worst game of the season from the arc. They were 13.3%. This is the lowest percentage. And they went 4 for 30, and 4 was the lowest that they've hit in a game this season. I think they hit 5 in like 5 or 6 games, so that was the previous low. Then you win by 14 on the road. Obviously, Orlando didn't have Franz, their best player, but still to hit 4 3-pointers and win by 14 in today's league is really hard to do. And they basically just completely controlled the second half because of their defense, really. So if they're going to do that, then yeah, maybe we should shut up about the shooting because it doesn't matter if you're going to lock teams down like that. But that's also just been a theme like this past week, right? Like I think it did hurt them against San Antonio, but these last 3 wins were all pretty ugly. And it's just because they just didn't shoot well in any of them. I think they have to credit all of those wins to the defensive side.
Yeah, so I quickly looked it up here on NBA.com. O2, guess what their 3-point percentage is over their last 3 games where they've gone 3-0 since that loss to the Spurs?
Yeah, it's got to be around between 20 and 25%, if I had to guess.
Spot on. 22.6%, right in the middle of your 20 and 25. They have made 6.3 on average out of 28 on average attempts. And like, that's the other thing. Not only do they not shoot a good percentage in these, they don't shoot very many. So just like a quick look here, obviously in that 3-game stretch compared to other teams' last 3 games, the least amount of makes, but the 4th fewest attempts per game as well. And then the other funny thing is they still don't shoot that well from the free throw line, even though they do tend to get there a little bit, still 6 in free throw attempts per game. I don't know that there's something, I hate to use the word special because we're still in the regular season, but man, there just something to be special about this team, figuring out a way to win, whether they're making shots or not. They're able to play through it, slow starts or otherwise. I want to look up the third quarter because didn't you text us a few weeks ago about their third quarters that they were like one of the best third quarter teams in the NBA or something like that?
Yeah, like it was like a big outlier in their offensive performance in the third compared to any other quarter. And we kind of debated back and forth, but it could be a confluence of things. I'm curious where you're going to take this because I feel like we never actually solved what it was.
No, I don't have I don't have a solution. I just was thinking about it more today because I feel like that Orlando game I feel like it happened a little bit in the Orlando game. And just all of these games in general, they just find a way to win. And ultimately, I do think that will serve them well. I will say some people are going to be mad at me for saying this, and I'm sorry. I am a little disappointed we didn't see a more healthy OKC team, a more healthy Cavs team. I really hope tomorrow night on Tuesday we get, I'll actually pull up the injury report right now for what they're saying for Harden. And so Harden is not even on it. I would guess we don't see Donovan Mitchell still. The last report, he was ruled out. He didn't play Sunday against the Nets. So I do wonder if we see him, but hopefully we'll at least see Harden in that game.
Yeah, they definitely got lucky last week not seeing both of their primary guys. And I think Harden had a good game the other night, even though he's playing with a thumb fracture, which seems tough to do. But I feel like a lot of Pistons fans would probably agree with that in general, just wanting to see what this Pistons team looks like against the other teams at full strength. Because I think part of the reason why the wins probably didn't feel that satisfying for a lot of people, even though at the end of the day, they were good wins. It's just because there was a feeling that they should have dominated more. If you're the number one team and you're playing OKC without their entire starting five, no Mitch, no James Harden, maybe you should win by more. But those teams still have depth. Like they're still pretty good teams. And having Harden back tomorrow, last time they faced Harden, I think he gave him 50, come to think of it. But before the last Clippers game where Kawhi gave him 50. But let's see when Harden's back.
I laugh because we just spent 5 minutes talking about how good this team is. And whenever we go through the roster and talk about players individually, I'm going to give Ausar Thompson a lot of love for being first team all defense. And then we just rattle off, this guy gave him 50, this guy gave him 50, this guy gave him 50.
It's just something about the Clippers guys where they put up 50 against the Pistons. But that's closer to what it's going to look like in the playoffs. And I don't know, even with James Harden and Donovan Mitchell being out of that game, I was still really impressed with how the Pistons played overall. Teams have off nights over the course of the season. You're not going to get every single game you should get on paper. But I really felt like they should have lost that game. And they just locked in, those final 3 minutes and got it done, really by the skin of their teeth. So tomorrow will be a greater challenge, assuming Harden plays. But I don't want to discount the win they had last week because they still have to really step up for that.
And I'm interested to see how they handle Evan Mobley. I thought Evan Mobley was really good in that game, especially early in the game offensively. And so I do think there's part of, and I can't say don't evaluate individual games because I took a lot of evaluation of the game against the Spurs the first time around. But there is a part of, for me, go get the 1 seed, right? So anytime they can win a game, that is huge. Boston is playing good basketball right now. I haven't dove into it real deep, but I continue to hear how easy Cleveland's schedule is down the stretch, how many of the tanking teams they have. The Knicks can obviously get hot at some point. So for me, there is just a little bit of continue to win games. And if they can find a way to do that, there's obviously a lot of value in that. I am excited to see them against Cleveland with Harden in the lineup. And then, of course, for me, I think Thursday against the Spurs will be a lot of fun just to see, is there a little bit of a difference? I know people felt like that was very much an outlier shooting game. Okay, I will hear that out. Let's see if things are balanced out. Or maybe it's, again, an outlier shooting game, and then we can evaluate why are Champagnie and Vassell getting so many good looks, or why are the Pistons guys, I think we know why maybe they want to have a good three-point shooting game. But I'm excited for those two. And then the schedule is a little bit more up and down. Just quickly, they play Brooklyn, Miami, Brooklyn again. Then they have Philly, Memphis, Toronto, Washington. So there's a lot of good team, play-in, playoff caliber team, and then tanking team, and then go back the other way and then the other way. So yeah, I think these next two are kind of the most exciting ones against Cleveland and San Antonio. Any other big picture thoughts? And guys, thank you for the comments and the questions. I have them starred. We will come back to those and we will answer those as we go through them. But O2, any other big picture thoughts in terms of where Detroit is at in the standings or anything like that before we get into some individual player conversation?
Yeah, and this could actually kind of tee us up for that player conversation, but you went 6-1 without Stu that entire time. And then you didn't have JD for the first 2 games. And you may not have liked how every win played out, but at the end of the day, you went 6-1 without your top rim protector. And you saw various guys step up in that stretch. So I don't think we learned anything about the Pistons necessarily because we knew they had the capability to do that. And the one game they lost was to the Spurs, who, quite frankly, I don't know if there's a team in the league that can solve them in a 7-game series, especially if Wemby's doing what he's done. They're just a crazy deep, crazy talented team. But otherwise, they have been an extraordinarily good team over the last, however long of a stretch you want to take it. I think they've won something like 10 of the last 12 or 9 of 11 or something like that. Having Stu back will help a lot against Cleveland tomorrow and then the Spurs in a couple of days, obviously. But just for them to sustain the defense, find ways to win games through arguably their worst shooting stretch of the season. I mean, it's got to be their worst. They haven't shot the ball that well, but it's just been especially bad as of late. None of those games really presented perfect circumstances, and you could get caught up on specifics, but 6-1, I think it's just close to what most people would have thought is a best case scenario over that tough of a stretch of games.
Yeah, I can't disagree at all. I mean, I love going to their B-ball reference page, and you just, it's color-coded green and red, right? Greens are wins, reds are losses, and you just never see that many reds in a row. The most, they had a 3 out of 4 where they lost to Utah by 2, lost to the Clippers, blew out the Lakers, and then they came back and lost to the Heat. 3 out of 4 there. But after that, it's just not that much. I think they've only lost back-to-back games twice all year, and they're not necessarily in an easy stretch. I think Michael brought it up here as well, and we talked about it. Coming out of the All-Star break, they have 2 days off the rest of the season, O2. And you probably feel this as the guy that covers the team. They have 4 back-to-backs still coming up here. It's just a whole lot of games down the stretch. And racking up these wins right now is huge because it wouldn't hurt to rest Cade Cunningham here or there, Tobias Harris here or there. I know they'll get a little bit of a break because of the play-in tournament between the regular season and the postseason, but it would be nice to have enough of a cushion over the Celtics, Knicks, Cavs, whoever it's going to be, that when you get into the final 2 or so weeks of the season, some of these guys can rest just a little bit. So I do want to talk to some of these individual players, and we'll get into that right after this short break.
All right, we're back. I want to lead off talking about the reigning Eastern Conference Player of the Week, Jalen Duren, who has come out of All-Star break playing like an All-Star. He had, I think going into Orlando, he averaged like 25 and 10 over his last 4. I thought he really, really stepped up at the end of that Cleveland game. Him and Dennis to help the Pistons pull that one off. He's just been, I think, dominant scoring-wise, too quick for the bigger centers, too strong for the smaller centers. He's putting his offensive game, I just think, together in a way that we haven't seen previously. And yeah, it just speaks again to the Pistons record over the last week without Stu, that Duren stepped up the way he did and got his first Player of the Week award for it.
Man, he's good. O2. I don't necessarily want to talk about the contract right now. I don't know what it's going to be. We talked about this. I don't know. It may have been actually on Game Theory. I don't think Detroit ultimately is going to end up costing themselves that much money. Everything I've kind of heard, the contract he's going to end up getting this summer is what he was looking for last summer anyway. And so I don't think Detroit, once they give him that, is going to end up, and you're going to get a playoff run to evaluate this as well. But you brought it up. Last 5 games since returning from his 2-game suspension, 26 points, 13.5 rebounds, O2. That is ridiculous. Over a steal, 1 block, on good efficiency. We know that's always going to be a thing with Jalen Duren. I'm always a little intrigued by he continues to just flash a little bit of this mid-range jumper. If he starts to knock that one down, I don't know how opposing bigs really guard him and stay in front of him. And one thing I always love to highlight in my notes is he is so much more than a dunker at the rim. And at some point, that's probably going to be very frustrating because I think the wider audience will just be like, oh, he's a great lob threat and stuff like that. And it's like Jalen Duren has just become so much more than that. He is more than even just a dunker. Like, he catches the ball, he controls it, he's able to finesse finish. He had some this week, and then along with how he's able to attack off the dribble. We've talked about it a little bit, O2. I want to see them lean more into it. I want to see more Jalen Duren without Cade Cunningham on the court, and essentially it being his show in a quote-unquote second unit or something like that. I think that's what they're going to have to lean into in the playoffs.
I mean, he's just got a great toolkit. You kind of hit on it, but he's got great hands. He's got a great catch radius. Like, you never see him like fumble passes, like whatever it may be. Cade could just find him from so many different angles. And I mean, I think he's got one of the best catch radiuses in the league. Honestly, he almost looks like a wide receiver sometimes, where he's able to get to the ball wherever it's at. The footwork has been better. His understanding, I think, of just angles and space, and like even having some patience and finesse down there too, has improved. Like, if he's in the dunker spot, like one way or another, he is going to get a clean shot off. And most of the time, it's going to go in. Like you said, he's not just a lob threat. He's not just a dunker. He's really showcased a variety of ways to get into the paint this season and then finish once he's down there. And yeah, he's flashed that mid-range jumper. Like, he's been a pretty steady free throw shooter in his career. Like, there have been some dips here and there, but he's also had stretches and like long stretches where he's flirted with 80%, which is really good for a big man. So this feels like the first season where he is just truly aware of his gifts and how he can apply them. And you back that up just with the skill work he's put in. Obviously, I think the coordination has just been better, the footwork. Yeah, he's done a lot for them this season offensively. You know, you're starting to see him pop up on some of the player ranking lists, like consistently top 30, even top 20 now. And he's still only 22. I mean, he's just not getting to, you know, what people consider a player's prime, you know, which, depending on who you ask, starts somewhere between 23 and 25. So it just makes you wonder, based on the contract talk, again, like how much better can he be next season and the season after that as he continues just to stack on skill, shot gets better, whatever else it may be.
I do, just for, you know, the people that like the on-off stuff. This will be a fun conversation as we go through these players, but he is second on the team of players that have played real minutes behind only Cade in terms of his on-off. He's a +6 per 100 possessions. Steven says JD's contract will be greatly affected by whether they make the finals or get knocked out in the first round. I agree with that to an extent. I mean, I think if they get knocked out in the first round and it's because nobody can make a three-pointer and he averages 25 and, 12. But I think to your point here is, I think it really comes down to how he looks in a playoff setting. Can he put up these similar, can he be 20 and 12 in the playoffs? If he does that, through a couple series, that's going to be huge. Michael also says he's been durable, which is huge. It's a great point. You talk about a lot of bigs on other teams, and it's really interesting. Fly Monk, which team is going to force the Pistons to match an offer sheet for JD? The Lakers is probably the easiest answer there and the quickest. Mr. 20 and 12 is a big number, but for me, this is just my opinion. If Detroit is going to win multiple series in the playoffs, I think it's behind JD putting up 20 and 12. I think they need a real number 2 option in the way we see him being a number 2 option. It doesn't have to be every game. Tobias can do it a game here. Maybe Duncan has an outlier game where he just hits like 6 or 7 threes. But I think for them to truly make a run in the playoffs, which if they don't, it's okay. I'm not saying that they have to, but I do think that that's what you would want to see from him. I just want to quickly point out, it was the Cleveland game, Omari. One, he's gotten really good at transition post-ups. That's something Detroit does. Cade will do this as well. Stu does it. He has such good footwork, O2. Like, he has this extra step after the pivot. It's not a travel. That's not what I'm saying. He just has really nice, it catches defenders off guard. He's really good with it. Off his spin move, he does it. All of those things. And then I still have issues with his ball screen defense. I still think his hips get turned the wrong way, but he has definitely improved. It's at very least where it was at the end of last season. And then the other thing is, he had a chase down block in that Cleveland game. He had a rotation block. Those just weren't things he was doing the first couple of years in the NBA. And I think he deserves credit for growing there as well. All right. Okay. So Mr. Ray says Miami Heat tried this with Bam and unfortunately hasn't led to a ton of championship level success. I think that's a bigger picture conversation for another day, but I do think it's an important conversation. I'm not trying to dismiss it, but I don't think we want to have that right now.
Yeah, but I do think Duren is more powerful and more aggressive than Bam, though. Like, I think there's an upside there that maybe Miami just hasn't realized with Bam yet.
So I was going to look like what Bam's best. So Bam had a 20-point, has had one season averaging 20 a game. Yeah. I don't also have they had Jimmy. So I guess, yeah, they put it. I don't want to quite go to this. Again, Mr. Ray, I'm not trying to dismiss the idea and the thought process. I don't necessarily want to get into it right now because I think it takes a little bit longer. Cade Cunningham. I think my thing here, we all know Cade is awesome. We know he's great. Where do you think Cade is at in the MVP conversation right now? I've been thinking, I'm going to have to rank this here over the next couple days because over on Game Theory, we're going to do 3/4 way awards. I know where I'm going to have him. I'm curious where you have him or think he would be, or you don't even have to say where you would have him, but just where you think he is for the general public.
He's got to be top 3. Like, I've seen some MVP polls where, like, Luka's been over him. Like, I just disagree with that. The Pistons have been better, and I think he's been overall a much more well-rounded player than Luka this season. Like Jokic, Shea, I mean, they're always going to be in that conversation as long as they have the games requirement because they're just both ridiculous players and have won championships. So they have the resume and also the production to sustain that. But to me, Cade at worst is 3. And on my personal list, I would have him 1 or 2. He's the best player on the best team in the NBA. They have dominated the East. They have been between 4 and 6 games in first place in the East for going on at least 2 months now. No one's been able to catch them. People bring up the efficiency, and that's the one knock, especially compared to Jokic and Shea, who are just in a completely different stratosphere of efficiency, even among star players. Cade's not there yet as far as the level they're at, but I think defensively, he's the best of the 3. Obviously, a very, very strong playmaker. And yeah, the Pistons, I don't think, sustain the defensive level they have if Cade were a minus defender. He's a plus defender in a group full of plus defenders. He's won them games with his defense. And he can do it in like a lot of different ways, right? You know, whether it's just straight up one-on-one defense or the chase down blocks or whatever it may be. So Cade's got the resume too. Like he's averaging 26, 10 and 6, you know, somewhere along the lines of that. His shot blocking has been extremely strong for a guard. I don't see how he's lower than 3 for the MVP race at this point.
I agree. I would have him 3. People won't like it. I understand it. I think the argument for I would be hard pressed to make the argument for him over Shea because Shea has played, even with recent games missed, has played close to the same amount of minutes as Cade. And I do just think that ultimately, like, Shea is a better scorer than Cade Cunningham right now. And I listen, like, that's not like, I don't think that should be blasphemy. Cade is a better creator. I think that is fair, but Shea is, you know, he's 55% from the field. Omari, 38% from 3, almost 90% from the line.
Just in his own class. Yeah, him and Jokic are like, it's tough.
So, and here's the thing. I think I would agree that Cade is a better defender than Shea. I also think Cade's in a tougher role than Shea. And so ultimately, I think he provides more value. But it's not like Shea's a bad defender. Like, Shea is a good defender. So here's the thing. This is the argument that I do agree with is Joker has missed a lot of time. So if you look at total minutes, Cade has played 1856. Jokic has played 1553. Denver is dropping in the standings and his defense has been like really bad. And I know he's never like a good defender. I usually defend Jokic a little bit, but I can't right now. Like the recent games I've watched, it's been really bad. I wonder if it's a little bit of the injury stuff, right? Like he's coming back from an injury, but ultimately the defense just hasn't been good. So I do think there's a little bit more of a conversation between Cade and Jokic for me. I would struggle to, in good faith, I couldn't put Cade amongst Shea. So Order of the Blazing Horse said Cade is generating more points per game than Shea, 3rd in the league. I will trust that stat. If Cade's 3rd in the league, I'm curious who's 1st and 2nd then, because if we're going off that, then, you know, why aren't those guys the MVP leaders? I still think Shea is better right now. Like if I'm being straight up, I don't think there's much of an argument for Luka to be with them. Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Brown. I think the other interesting one is actually Wembanyama. And Wemby is interesting because he is so good. Wemby is so good defensively. 0-2. I would still have Cade above him, but to me, it's like those 4. I would have Shea 1 right now. I think I'll still end up with Jokic 2, Cade 3, and then Wemby 4. And then there's almost like it's not a huge tier break, but then there's a little bit of a break between Anthony Edwards, Jalen Brown, Donovan Mitchell, whoever. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody, but that's where I'm at with it.
Look, Luka is having a great season in his own right too, and I don't want to take that away from him. But you brought up Wemby, and that is the one where I'm like, if it's a 4-player race, then I think he's probably number 4 in that. And I don't want to take anything from Jalen Brown either, because Boston's, other than the Pistons, probably been the most surprising team in the league this season. But I also feel like there's a bit of an argument here. Like, is it just who's the best overall player, or is it who has the most value to their team, right? You know, because Cade hasn't missed a lot of time compared to some of the other guys, but OKC has won pretty consistently with or without Shea. You know, like they they just have. And Shea is, I just checked his stats. He's shooting career highs from the field and from three.
Who? Shea?
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so I'm going to get the show. Here's an interesting number, just in terms of this, because I think people are quick to say, yeah, Shea averages almost 45 points per 100 possessions, Omari. Cade Cunningham averages 34 points per 100 possessions. I'm not trying, I don't like doing this. This is why I hate these conversations, because then it's like, I'm cool with Cade should be number one. I'll listen to it. Just for me, when I watch the game, I still think I would take Shea Gilgeous-Alexander right now. I think I would probably still take Jokic, either though I would listen to that. I'm pretty cool with Cade being number three. Like, I feel like that's I feel like I'm giving Cade a lot of love for saying he's been the third best player in the NBA this year.
Yeah, no, I mean, it wasn't that long ago that, people were still talking about, Cade in terms of, can he be that guy? Can he be this and can he be that? And he's silenced a lot of that. And, that conversation isn't even a conversation anymore. And the fact that he's in these MVP talks in the first year of his max deal, year 5, I mean, this is the perfect trajectory for him. He's the only guy younger than him that we've discussed is Wemby. Other than that, you compare Cade to where Shea was at that point, to where Jokic was at that point, those guys have only gotten better. So this is like the worst version of Cade we're going to see. So him being number 3, I mean, that's, like you said, it's not an insult at all. That's still praise. You just also have to acknowledge that Shea and Jokic are just freaks. They're just in a tier of their own as far as scoring, and anybody who wins MVP is going to have to make up for it with playmaking and defense and intangible things, because I would never predict any player to be on the level of scorer that they are right now. It's just, like I said, they're in their own territory.
And this is where I think this conversation gets convoluted, and I'm not like trying to call anybody out. It's like this is where this conversation gets hard. Like all defense stuff is very simple. Like, to me, it's more simple. 01 it's not who's better, but who's the most valuable. Cade is the most valuable player. YouTube user says Jokic is a better player, but Cade has had more impact this season. I do think that those are interesting points, and I will listen to that. I think, especially with Jokic, that's whenever you factor in the minutes, it's hard for me to discount what Shea is doing just because he has a better team around him. That's my thing. And so I think that, again, for me, I think the Jokic one carries a little bit more weight because you're talking such a different amount in terms of minutes played this year. I don't know. I don't like this because it's funny you brought it up. 2 years ago, I was here defending Cade being the face of a franchise and being able to carry a team to the NBA Finals and all of that. And now I'm the bad guy because I'm saying he was third instead of first or whatever. And I hope it doesn't come off negative. I didn't want to spend that much time on Cade. He's obviously been incredible. Where do you want to go to next?
Yeah, I was going to say Ausar.
That's where I was going to go as well.
Because, I mean, I think he, Duren, and Cade and Stu, I mean, they're like the 4 most impactful players. But as far as the defensive end, they sustained their defense because of Ausar Thompson. Because Ausar Thompson is a one-man defense. I thought he single-handedly flipped that the Orlando game in their favor, just with the havoc he wrecked in the third. I thought he had one of his better two-way games of the season against Cleveland. Obviously, OKC, he had a good game. I feel like he has been in a really solid two-way stretch. I feel like he's been better as a cutter. I feel like he's been better as a playmaker. And the defense just continuing to be as good as it's been. He's just been great. That's really it. He's just been great. And I think other than Cade and Duren, he is by far the biggest reason why they went 6-1 over this past 7-game stretch.
Real quick, back to Cade. Fly Monk says, also, when does Cade get the MVP whistle he deserves? I agree with this offensively. I actually think he gets a decent whistle defensively. I actually think Cade plays with his hands on a lot at the point of attack. And I actually think he get called for more fouls than what he does. So I do agree that he still deserves more offensively, especially compared to other players. Like, I watch some guys, I'm like, why is this dude getting the call? But I do think he's gotten a better call defensively. I think Ausar has been awesome recently. I think his passing has been great, 0-2, but I do think a lot of it has come from off the ball usage. He cuts into a spot, catches, and then he makes a quick decision. It's not necessarily him running ball screens and on-ball usage or something like that. I think he's looked really good. This dude is a monster defensively. Everybody else is like, Cade's what? I think the thing I would be more upset about, I think Cade is going to make first team first team all NBA, no question. Like, I think that is said and done. Let's say if he ended up fourth, I would be more mad if Ausar doesn't make first team all defense than if Cade doesn't finish third in the MVP voting or something. Does that make sense? Like, I think this guy deserves so much to be first team all defense.
Yeah, I mean, he is a one-man defense, and I'm not, like, that sounds kind of crazy to say, especially for like a player who's not a big man. But what he did against Cleveland, he had 2 blocks where like he just got off the floor so quick. I think he had one where De Silva shot from like the left baseline, and you just kind of see his saw rise up from the trees and the paint. And he just gets to it so quickly. I am quite positive, because I was sitting on that side of the court, that De Silva had no clue Ausar was there before he rose up and got it. But it's not even just the big explosive plays, right? It's just his tendency to always be in the right spot, the deflections he comes up with, just the way he maps the floor, knows where he needs to be, and then just having the coordination and quickness that he does to get there. They won the Cleveland game because Ausar sparked their transition offense, and they held Cleveland to like 31% or 32% or something like that in the second half. So much of that was Ausar. And we talk about the shooting or lack thereof with him, but he is an extremely valuable offensive player, not just because of the playmaking. Like you said, he'll get into a spot and then he surveys the floor if the shot's not there. But like, they get so many transition opportunities because he creates a lot of them, and he creates those opportunities almost single-handedly. If he doesn't do that last night, their offense does not get going in the second half, and I think that's a much closer game.
Mr. Ray says Ausar is the best perimeter defender in the NBA, but the true one-man defenses are still the big men like Wemby and Gobert. Like, I do think, Wemby's going to win DPOY. I think Gobert, probably Chet, just because of what OKC is as a team. But I think Ausar's fourth. I think that's where I'll ultimately end up having him. Michael says, what do you think about playing Ausar with Ron more often? And Fly Monk says, more Ron Ausar, please. Yes, and yes, because I think Ron Holland is much improved defensively. Like, he is very good on the defensive end. I don't know what we're going to do about Ron Holland's jumper right now. I guess continue to shoot it and hopefully that he gets through it or whatever. But those two guys with Stu, it's like, you could put some defensive lineups out there. I mean, I always make this pitch over on Game Theory is Ron Holland has gotten so good defensively that while I think Ausar Thompson is the best perimeter defender in the NBA, I don't freak out when he has to come out of the game and Ron Holland has to go in and take the assignment. And he's not Ausar level, but that's how good he is, Omari, on the defensive end. He's grown so much. So while the offense maybe hasn't taken the leap I was hoping, the defense absolutely has.
Yeah, Ron, just on ball, I think he's been a monster. He's just like that perfect blend of, he's like 6'7", 6'8", long arms, big wingspan, but he's physical too. He defends with his chest. I think he's been a lot better about not fouling as much as he did last season. I actually wrote about him today. I talked to him about just his, drive, shoot, like processing and decision-making when he's open in the corner because teams do leave him wide open. And unlike Ausar, he will take that three when it's there. It hasn't really gone there for him a lot this past week, but they want him to keep taking it. They pass it into him in the corner with the expectation that if the drive isn't there, he'll shoot it. And there's no better way to get like in-game reps than to just take it open shots, right? I think he is actually in an ideal situation where the team is so good defensively that they can live with him, not knocking down threes. And I also think it's more pronounced because the only guy that can really consistently knock them down is Duncan. I think it just stands out more, when your wings on the floor and not knocking them down when you're already starved for shooting as is. But you might as well play them together if you're not going to knock down threes, right? They do try to stagger them, and it's understandable because somebody has to knock down a three, and those guys just aren't going to do it.
Do they know O2? Do they? Are we sure they have to? Maybe they just don't.
Yeah, but if they're going to be that good defensively, and it's already bad enough to be a star player and have to deal with 48 minutes of both of them, and then you put them on the floor together, and like, we've seen 9 to 5 a bit this season. I feel like not as much as of late. I feel like they've been more intentional about staggering them, which I'm sure just reflects the shooting rep that they've been in. But yeah, if they're not going to knock down threes, you might as well just lead fully into the chaos. And there's probably no better way to do that than having those guys out there next to each other.
Yeah, Caleb says, has Ron gotten better at weak side box outs? That was a killer last year. I think that was a jab at me because I always like to point those out. And then YouTube user comes right in. Still needs to learn to box out and fundamentally sound rebounding. He's great attacking out of area. I would agree with that. Matthew, our guy from Brazil, says, what's up? It is, he told us, 1951. So that would be 7:51 there in Brazil for him. Thank you for joining us. Mr. Ray says, who's a better defender, Steph Castle or Ron Holland? I will now quickly answer and then duck out of the way. Steph Castle. Okay, let's go to break. When we come back, we can talk about whoever you want to talk about, O2.
All right, we're back with segment 3. We can touch on Dennis a bit because...
Yes. Let's do this and then we'll get to the questions. I think it's important to have the Dennis conversation.
For sure. He sort of went into a slump after he signed the extension. I'm not saying that there's a correlation there. I'm just saying that's how it timed out. But he's got a clutch gene to him, and just the way he stepped up, to draw the foul and hit those 3 free throws to send the game into overtime against Cleveland. And then he plays all of overtime. And I think he had a clutch block. Him and Duren got the 2-man game going early, and they took that early 6-point lead. To me, that reflects Dennis, and that reflected why he's been able to build that level of confidence. Because when you need him to step up, he steps up. And he has done that pretty consistently all season. I don't think they win that game. I mean, Cade fouls out and then Dennis saves the day, right? You can't really put a value on that. Straight up, they don't win that game.
You know this. I normally don't watch the games live. I was not watching that one live. I was behind, but I was following the score. When they won in overtime, I was like, oh man, must have been Cade Cunningham heroics. When I got to the point that he fouled out, I rewound it a few times like, there's no way that was actually his 6th foul. There's no way that Cade actually fouled out. How do they win this game with Cade fouling out in this situation? So just to put an emphasis on what you're saying there about how Dennis was huge for them.
Yeah, and we saw that earlier in the season with Cade missed some time. And that's kind of when Dennis came in and really initially got it going. Yeah, so to get him on, 2 years, $8 billion, he very well earned it. And I just feel like that Cleveland performers encapsulated exactly why he's just been so key to them this season. They can survive him going through stretches where he's not shooting the ball well. They can't survive Cade finally got with 2 minutes left, and you just need anybody who can handle the ball and keep things going. And Dennis absolutely did that and has done that.
One, I agree with that. We saw it going back to Summer League, right? You could see how confident this dude is. He's always talking trash, all of that. I'm Robin, you might as well label this podcast, Bryce is a Pistons hater or something like that, because that's what I'm going to get. Last 8 games for Dennis Jenkins, 5.5 points on 30% from the field, 14% from 3. None of the other numbers stand out a whole lot one way or the other. 17 minutes a game. I only point that out to just say it has been a little bit of a struggle over the last 8. And I don't even know if that's the stretch. I don't know when he got elevated, the actual date or whatever. I do think it's important context, but I also stand by what I said. I think it was last episode. They need to lean into him. Give him the ball. Let him go. Let him play through this slump. Let him get his shots. Let him play in big moments. Let him play with Cade. Let him play without Cade. Let him play off Jalen Duren. This is the path that they have chosen at the deadline, which I'm fine with. It's whatever. I know we have some Kevin Huerter questions. We'll get to that in a second. Lean into Dennis Jenkins. We're about to talk a little bit about Karis LeVert. Lean into Dennis Jenkins. That continues for me to be my take, even through the recent struggles. Play him 20 plus minutes every night, sometimes with Cade, sometimes without, and let him figure this out. Because I don't know what the other answer is. This is the decision you made, so I think you have to lean into it.
Yeah, I think he's just got a dynamic aspect to his game that outside of Cade, and I think just with the bench unit in particular, this team kind of lacks. He's got the best handle of anybody on the bench. He might be the only bench player they have really that you feel comfortable handling the ball, for longer than 2 minutes at a time, when Cade sits, which just in and of itself highlights his value to that group. But it can't just be him handling the ball. He's got to shoot. He's got to score. I thought Orlando was a game where they really could have just used in the first half somebody just come in and inject some pace in it and in some pace and energy. Like Dennis should play to stand out. Like I think that's really what it boils down to for him. Play to stand out. Play like you're the hero and they need you to step up because a lot of times they actually do kind of need you to play the hero ball and step up, especially when threes aren't falling. I think he's been one of the better shooters on this team. And he can lean into that. I think he's figuring out a bit like how much command do they need me to take if it's not like a do or die situation. Like he could come into the end of the game in Cleveland and it's like, okay, if it's not me, I don't know who's going to do it, right? I feel like he doesn't necessarily have that same level of urgency or purpose when he hasn't been in those scenarios. But if he brought that every single time, like you said, they need somebody to step into that role. And I think he's shown that he can do it.
One says, could be hit a little bit of a wall. He's probably traveled and played the most he has his basketball career, including college. It's a fair point. He's still a young player. Our guy Devon says, I'm late, but I'm here. I was watching the OKC game and realized Caruso is kind of a Bryce doppelganger. LOL, don't hate me. I appreciate that you said Caruso is like me, right? Me and that guy could not play any more differently on the basketball court. Obviously, he's a billion times better than I ever was. I'm Alex Caruso. You're Andrew Wiggins. Like, we'll roll with that. So
we'll just take it. I'm looking at Caruso now. Okay, so you guys both have beards. You're both bald, and the beards might be the same color. So I don't think you look like Alex Caruso, but if you wanted to be Caruso for Halloween, you could pull it off.
I could pull it off. The Rockets assistant coach is definitely the closest one. Like I have a sister-in-law that lives in Houston, and so they go to games occasionally. And every time they go to the game, they take a picture of him and send it to my wife and whatever. But hey, listen, me and you being Caruso and Wiggins, that's a heck of a start right there for a basketball team. We can win a lot of games if that's who we got.
It's a lot of boxes, man. Just put a big next to us. We're good.
Yeah. Am I taller than Alex Caruso? Let's see if I can pull up his measurements real quick. 6'5". I am taller than Alex Caruso. And I cannot guard anywhere close to as good. Cheryl, hello, shout out. Thank you for being here the whole episode. Hello, I'm looking forward to tomorrow's game with Isaiah back. Quick touch, Isaiah Stewart has served his suspension, and now he will be back. I thoroughly enjoy the B-ball Paul Reed minutes, and he was huge for this team. I do think we also saw at times why B-ball Paul is a third center for this team, and it's a huge role and very important. And my guess is he has minutes in the playoffs that are important too. But it is not the same as Isaiah Stewart. I think you would agree, and I think Detroit should be excited to have him back.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that Charlotte brawl was 3 weeks ago.
That's it, yeah, right?
Like a 7-game suspension is already a long suspension, but yeah, you just combine that with All-Star break kind of taking place.
We had the All-Star break, yeah.
And I told Duren the first game he came back. I'm like, man, I feel like you were going a lot longer than 2 games. He was like, yeah, it does. But that's because at that point, it had already almost been a week and a half, 2 weeks because of All-Star. So yeah, I mean, we haven't seen Stu play basketball in so long. And even though they went 6-1, they did miss him. I think they missed his defensive intensity on the floor, especially during certain rotation shifts. I think his spacing at the 5, they've missed a little bit. Like he can knock down threes. Like the Pistons really just need players who can knock down threes. He's the only one giving you spacing at that spot, so they've missed that. And especially with the stretch coming up, I thought he handled that Jared Allen Mobley front court about as well as you possibly can as a post-oriented center. But on the other end, it's the South too a lot. So yeah, he's coming back right on time with Cleveland and San Antonio being the next 2 games.
YouTube user says, Bryce was a legit college hooper. Injuries is the only reason he isn't a household name. The first part of, nope, none of that statement is true. I did actually play Division I basketball. I did actually get injured. I never was close to good enough to be a household name. The funny thing is Isaiah Stewart's getting a lot of pub right now in the NBA draft space, O2. Do you know why?
I don't know why.
Merez Johnson Jr. at Michigan is getting comped to Isaiah Stewart. And so there are a lot of conversations. So over on Game Theory, we talked about the Michigan-Illinois game. We talked about Merez. And Merez has very solidly worked himself into first-round conversation. And he is very frequently comped to Isaiah Stewart. And so a lot of conversation around him and all of that. Okay, let's touch on, I think, what people definitely want us to touch on. Help on the name, Salih. Salih, am I right? Am I wrong? O2 is just not going to
roll. We're going to roll.
O2 is acting like his screen is frozen and not help. You guys know how much I hate messing up names. So I'm going to go with Salih here. If it's wrong, correct me, and I apologize. And they say, Omari, please ask JV about LeVert's performance. Look at the stats from missed shots, turnovers. I don't see any benefit in playing LeVert. I will give some quick context here, Omari, and my thoughts, and then I'll let you go. One, the offense is frustrating at times. I still think he's better defensively than what people give him credit for. And anybody who wants to scream the on-offs at me, O2, I will give you this. Karis LeVert does have a negative on-off this year for the Pistons. You know whose is worse than Karis LeVert's? Isaiah Stewart. And so while we sit here and wax poetically about how much we love Isaiah Stewart, if we want to solely point to the on-off numbers, there's some context around it.
Karis has had, I think, his ups and downs this season. I do think he has held his own defensively on this team. And he's, I think, part of the reason why the second unit can maintain what the first unit kind of starts is because he does give you some size and strength. I think he's moved better on the defensive end than the offensive end. I think offensively he is more boom or bust. He's had nights where, shots are falling. He's had nights where, I think it's been a bit more chaotic. I also think the LeVert minutes have become maybe a bigger pain point than they need to be. Because in the grand scheme, his shot attempts only account for so much of the offense, right? It's just not, I don't know. I don't think he has, you could talk about the contract they signed him to and all that. At the end of the day, I don't think he has been so bad that it's like, he's unplayable or this or that. I think he's held his own in his minutes. He's like 8th on the team in minutes. His role's not that big. I think the only other thing I do kind of see is you have guys like Sasser or Chaz who on paper could probably knock down more threes, and they kind of need that on some nights. But I think the reason why he's played and has had his role is more so because of what he does on defense than offense. And it does help that out of all the guys who are kind of like those defensive wing type dudes, he is the best shooter. He's not like he's shooting 34%. Like it's not amazing, but it's also a lot better than you're getting for some of the other guys on the team. So
I think we've seen JB's playoff rotation coming out of the All-Star break. And I realize, with the context of Isaiah Stewart is going to be there instead of Paul Reed. And also he could slide in and play a little bit at the 4, which maybe you don't have to play Javonte Green as much or whatever. But to me, he has shown us his cards with who he trusts as his 10-man rotation. I do wonder if in some of these upcoming games, i.e. the Nets, the Wizards, down the stretch, if they have a real lead, at first place, if that's when we see the Herders and the Sassers and maybe even the Chaz Laniers and see if he can work them into the rotation. Whether I agree with the 10-man rotation or not, I do like the strategy that JB and his staff has taken here post All-Star break to try to just run out this group of 10 and develop some chemistry and continuity with this group if this is what they are going to go with. Again, like my biggest thing is as long as he's not just playing fully over Jenkins or Holland or something like that, I don't know that I believe in anybody else enough to just be upset that he's getting minutes. The game, it happened last night.
It's costing them anything. Like name one game where it's like, oh, we lost that game because of Karis LeVert. Like it just hasn't happened. It just hasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, even over this past week, they're still winning.
It's easy to point to plus minus stuff, but again, I don't love that. Yeah, maybe Sasser, Matthews, why not Sasser? I will hear it out. I just don't mind. If this is truly what the 10-man rotation is, I don't mind that JB has picked a certain stretch of the season to play that. And I do think then we'll see some of the other guys eventually. I understand though, O2, why people are frustrated that Herder hasn't played more, right? Like you traded Jaden. At the end of the day, you did trade Jaden Ivey. And I know the pick swap could be valuable. We'll see where Minnesota ends up in the standings. And it could. It allowed me to draft, well, I talked Sam into it, but in our mock, the Pistons were able to draft Chris Sanak in the draft as opposed to, somebody at potentially 30. But I understand the frustration of Herder comes in and hasn't played. So let's go to that real quick. Is he just out of the lineup right now? What are your thoughts on where things stand with Kevin Herder?
Yeah, I think he's just out of the lineup. I think JB's found a rotation he's comfortable with, and the rotations work. I think if the biggest pain point of the rotation is, Karis had 2 plays in 15 minutes that I didn't like, it just speaks to how deep this team has been. And I think it's just been them leaning into their identity as a defensive team. Just sticking with Ron, sticking with Wu, sticking with the guys who have got them to this point. With that, they need shooting. Herder has a track record for being able to shoot, even if he hasn't knocked down shots over this last season and a half. And you did trade J.I. for him, and J.I. was in the rotation. So I understand the argument of you traded a guy who was in the rotation for a guy who was not in the rotation. I think some of that is J.I. was coming back from injury, and to get him back to where he was, you have to play him. So I don't think you can just kind of judge those two situations in a vacuum. But yeah, I mean, on paper, Harder can give you a lot of the stuff you get from Duncan. And if you could anchor the second unit spacing-wise with him, then that would feel a significant need. He's played here and there. He hasn't played a lot, but he has played. I thought he hit some shots against Toronto and maybe one other game, but hasn't really played enough to really develop a rhythm or chemistry with his new team. But I do understand just the argument of you have somebody that you traded for and potentially could solve some of the issues, and they just haven't played him much.
Derek Brown, are you guys scared of the Bucks first round if Giannis is healthy? I will just say, I think Detroit, I think the narrative around the East, and I think it's starting to change a little bit, but it's not going to be just a walk through first round. I don't think no matter who they get. We're talking potentially the Miami Heat in the first round. Are we really just going to discount the Miami Heat of all organizations, as a first round? I'm not saying that I would pick Detroit to lose any of these matchups. I would still pick them to win, but whether it's Miami, Charlotte, a Giannis-led Bucks team, I think all of those teams are going to provide a real first-round competitive matchup that I think ultimately will probably be good for Detroit to set them up then for a run deeper into the playoffs. But unless they get the Sixers and then Embiid doesn't play and Paul George doesn't play but what if you get the Sixers with, Embiid healthy and Paul George back? That's not an easy team to play against. So I don't think there are paths to the first round matchup not being quote unquote scary, but I think it's most likely that they end up with a first round matchup where you go, hey, they better show up, through this first round, or, it could get real interesting. I think a lot of those teams have some interesting, possibilities.
Yeah. 7 through 10 right now in order is, I just had it up and I just closed it. 1 second. The 4 teams in some order. It was, I think, Orlando, Miami, Atlanta, and then Charlotte, 7 through 10. And then Milwaukee is 2 or 3 games back for 11. I don't know if any of those teams should scare the Pistons necessarily. I think in a 7-game series, the Pistons just very clearly on paper are the better team, but Charlotte is not a 31-31 team. They've actually played probably a 45-51 team over the last couple months or so. Orlando, I mean, with Franz, that is a good basketball team. You can't discount that. The Hawks, I feel like of all those teams, the Hawks are probably the one that's I feel like would be most likely to be a sweep. I just don't think they match up against the Pistons well. I don't think they're...
I agree with this.
Especially deep. I don't think any of those teams are scary, but I think Atlanta's probably the team they would be least afraid of. And like you said, Miami's a tough, well-coached team. That's never going to be an easy series regardless of who they play. Then Milwaukee, they've been winning. They just got Giannis back. I don't think they have nearly enough depth to really push the Pistons. But yeah, I mean, you have Giannis. If there's a team in there I think could scare the Pistons, it would probably be Charlotte or Orlando, assuming they're healthy with Franz.
You want to know what team has the best net rating since January 1st, Omari?
Who?
The Charlotte Hornets.
Yeah.
The Pistons are second, tied with the Boston Celtics. And then, I guess to my point and yours here, Miami is 10th. So again, this isn't like oh my gosh, I think they're in trouble. I just do think, somebody said it, the national narrative around the East is very unfair this year. I think the top 4 teams are all really interesting, especially if Boston gets Tatum back and New York is the good version of New York and all of that. And I think even the depth of it is better than what people think. All right, last 2 here real quick. Caleb said, did some rough counting on teams who've been shorthanded against the Pistons, and I counted about 22 games where they are missing a quote-unquote key player. Did not factor in the Pistons also being shorthanded. I only brought this up. We talked about it a little bit at the top. I had somebody else bring this up to me also. I don't think it should change what we think about Detroit, Omari. I do think it has kept us from getting some of the more fun evaluations. That's my take on it. It kept us from getting a fun evaluation against Oklahoma City. It kept the Cleveland thing, I just want to see how JB is going to match up with those two guards. And we're not going to get to see it because they're only, they didn't have either. And then now they're only going to have one. So that is kind of my biggest thing with it is I just hate that it's taken away some of our evaluations. It's not a discredit to what Detroit has done.
Yeah, that's just basketball. Like, teams are always going to be shorthanded. Perfect health for most teams is just not a reality at any point, especially when you're talking about players who have pretty substantial injury histories already. But like you said, it just makes it tougher to project potentially who you might see in the Eastern Conference Finals or Finals. You only see OKC twice a year. You only see the Spurs twice a year. Like, you just basically hope Shea is healthy for, I think they played OKC on the 29th or 31st. Like, you hope he's healthy for that game because that's the only time you're going to see him unless you get to the finals. But it just also takes away some of the momentum for those games. Like, you had 2 games last week that were on national TV, and it just kind of takes the bite out of it as a fan. When it's like, oh, OKC's entire starting 5 is out. You didn't necessarily show up to, watch their second string, even though they're still a pretty good basketball team with those guys. So, yeah, like you said, it just makes it tougher to project the back half of the playoffs and getting a better sense for how they measure up against the other top teams.
Caleb says, I was the someone else on Twitter. Appreciate your guys' basketball IQ and takes. Thank you for your support, Caleb. And Caleb, I'm getting old, man. Like, you're lucky I remembered that I had this conversation on Twitter. I apologize for that. Last one, Baisley 2000. Why is the media trying to take Coach of the Year away from JB? First Keith Smith, and then last night Sam Vecini. I want to be very careful here because those two guys are literally 2 of my favorite people in this space. I will say I almost quote tweeted Sam's last night with a very strong frustration that Sam said that it was Joe Mazzulla by a wide margin. I will listen to Joe Mazzulla for Coach of the Year. My vote that I don't actually have will be JB. I did take a little bit of whatever with the fact that Sam said why. I think by saying wide margin, you discredit what JB has done just a little bit. And I don't like that all of a sudden people act like they thought Detroit was going to be awesome this year all of a sudden. And I don't like that. Or that the coaching staff doesn't get... Why does Boston's coaching staff get credit for Nimi Keita getting better, but JB and his staff don't get credit for Jalen Duren improving from last year to this year? I will listen to Joe... To be clear, Joe Mazzulla also does deserve to be in this conversation. I don't think people should say that JB is unquestionably by a wide margin Coach of the Year because Boston has been incredible this season. I would vote for JB, and that's where I'm at on it.
Yeah, I feel like the Pistons have been so much better in the rest of the East that now it's almost being taken for granted a bit, the way it's being discussed. Like, this team won 14 games 2 years ago. They had a 30-game improvement, and now they may have another 20-game improvement on top of last season. I spend the most time around this team, obviously, so my perspective is just somebody who has been on the ground floor of this whole thing. But to go from 14 to 44 to potentially 64 wins, because that's on the table for the Pistons, the way that they have been playing in 2 years, and to not get a Coach of the Year, a Executive of the Year, or an MVP, to me that just sounds crazy. Like, how can you get that much better? But there were also other teams that were more deserving of it. Like, to me, the epitome of Executive of the Year is, you turn this team into whatever. The epitome of Coach of the Year is you turned this team into a legitimate contender. Mazzulla's been fantastic this season. He deserves to be in the conversation. But people had the Pistons coming into the year as like the 6th or 7th best team. Nobody had them in the playoffs the year before. This is the second straight year they have wildly exceeded expectations. So, like I said, I feel like it's being taken for granted a little bit that they've been this good. I don't see how JB isn't first or second for this award, just based on how rapid this turnaround has been. A lot of that is JB.
Yeah,
they've had the number 1 defense since December 1st. Like, yeah, they have a great roster, but the coaching staff has honed that, right? Like, that doesn't just happen.
Nobody praised the offseason like they just did something terrific. Everybody said that they should have made a big move at the deadline, and they didn't. And JB still has this team winning games. I don't know. I do find myself at times listening to national podcasts. Detroit is the favorite. It's the most fun team for people to predict getting upset in the first round already. And they're the team in the East that gets mentioned last and is often not part of the narrative. Boston's hot right now. The Knicks are hot right now. The Raptors are playing fun. The Hornets have been awesome. And they just kind of get pushed to the side a lot. I understand more and more I understand the Detroit versus everybody narrative and theme and all of that for people from Detroit. I appreciate it. I'm good. Detroit versus everybody. I love Clifton says, I don't want any awards. I'm with you there. I love it. But I understand why the fan base has some of that stuff. And yeah, Mr. Ray says Detroit versus everybody is the motto for the reason. I love it all. I'm excited to come out there. That's my plan. 6 weeks from now? I'm excited to be there for game 1 is my plan to check out Pistons and whoever they play. This was a good one. I was honestly nervous, Omari, that we'd have to go like 45 minutes. Wes wasn't here with an outline, so I had no idea where we were going to go with things. Guys, the chat was incredible today. You guys were on top of it. You guys were great comments. Everybody was respectful. I appreciate it so much. One last shout out to Wes and Jill and Winona. Just awesome to have her, join us and that everybody's doing well there. So O2, go enjoy. Where are you at?
Cleveland.
Cleveland. Yeah, Cleveland.
Cleveland.
The great city of Cleveland. I've never been there. I'm sure there's a lot of fun stuff to do. Go enjoy that. And a good week of basketball ahead for the Pistons. Take it away, my guy.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody, for joining. It's always the bias I have the least amount of expectations for to end up being the longest ones.
The best. No question.
Like 2 months. So,
yeah.
Thanks for the engagement, everybody. And then, as always, big thanks to our audio producer, Robin Chan, our editor-in-chief, Dakota Avery Nichols, and big shout-out to West Davenport, as always. And we'll talk to you all next week.